He was a billionaire used to controlling everything but when his daughter hugged a stranger waitress asking for a mother. He had no idea that moment would unravel secrets he never saw coming. Ethan Caldwell was one of those men people read about in magazines but never met in real life. His face often appeared on business covers, smiling proudly beside words like success, power, and fortune. But behind all that wealth, he was a lonely man. He had lost his wife 2 years ago in a car accident, and since then, something inside him had turned cold. He still lived in his giant glass house overlooking the city. Still attended meetings, still made deals, but he rarely laughed anymore. The only light in his life was his little daughter, Lily. Lily was 6 years old, full of questions, energy, and messy curls that reminded Ethan of his wife, Anna. But lately, he had noticed a sadness in her eyes. She often drew pictures of her mom or stared out the window, as if waiting for someone who would never come back. Ethan didn't know how to fill that emptiness. He could buy her toys, dolls, and even her favorite pony. But he couldn't buy the warmth of a mother's hug. One chilly Saturday morning, Ethan decided to take Lily out for breakfast. It wasn't something he did often. His mornings were usually spent, buried in phone calls and emails, but that day felt different. Maybe he missed Anna a little more than usual. Maybe he wanted to see Lily smile. He told his driver to take them somewhere quiet, away from the busy city. After an hour's drive, they stopped at a small diner on the edge of a country road. The building looked old but warm, with bright red booths and the smell of pancakes floating in the air. The bell above the door jingled as they entered. Lily's eyes lit up. "Double quotes, Daddy? Can we sit by the window?" she asked, pointing at a booth where sunlight poured through the glass. "Of course," Ethan said with a small smile. It had been a long time since he'd said yes without checking his calendar first. They sat down, and a waitress walked over. She looked to be in her early 30s, with kind eyes and a tired smile that carried warmth. Her name tag said Sarah. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said to Lily. "And good morning to you, sir. What can I get you both today?" Lily grinned. "Can I have pancakes with lots of syrup?" "Lots of syrup, coming right up," Sarah said with a wink. "And for you, sir, coffee?" "Black," Ethan replied, his voice quiet but polite. As Sarah walked away, Lily swung her legs under the table. "She's nice," she whispered. Ethan nodded. He wasn't used to small talk, but something about the place, maybe the music playing softly, or the smell of butter and sugar, made him feel more relaxed than he had in months. When Sarah brought their food, Lily started talking endlessly. She told stories about her school, her drawings, her teddy bear named Snowy. Sarah listened with genuine interest, laughing softly and nodding. Ethan watched in silence, half listening, half lost in thought. He couldn't remember the last time Lily talked so freely. At one point, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was his assistant, calling about a problem with one of his companies. He sighed. Even here, peace couldn't last. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, and stepped outside to take the call. Inside, Lily looked at her half-eaten pancakes, and then at Sarah, who was wiping down a nearby table. "Can I ask you something?" Lily said softly. Sarah turned to her. "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" Lily's voice trembled. "Do you think my mommy can see me from heaven?" Sarah froze for a second, her heart squeezing in her chest. She hadn't expected that. "I think she can," she said gently. "And I think she's very proud of you." Lily blinked up at her. "I miss her. Daddy doesn't talk about her anymore. Sometimes I wish I had a mommy here." Her lips quivered. "Can you be my mommy for today?" Tears instantly filled Sarah's eyes. She had served hundreds of customers over the years, but no one had ever said something like that. She slowly knelt beside Lily's seat and opened her arms. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. Lily climbed into her arms and hugged her tightly. At that exact moment, Ethan came back inside. The sight stopped him cold. His daughter hugging the waitress like she'd known her forever. His heart, which had been locked away behind years of work and grief, suddenly felt something crack open. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, watching Sarah brush back Lily's curls. "You know what?" she said softly. You are one of the sweetest girls I've ever met. And I bet your mommy is smiling right now because you gave someone a hug." Lily smiled through her tears. "You think so?" "I know so," Sarah replied, smiling back even though her own eyes were wet. Ethan walked over slowly and sat back down. "Everything okay here?" he asked gently, trying to sound casual. Double quotes. "Yes, Daddy," Lily said. Sarah gave me a hug. Ethan looked at Sarah and nodded. "Thank you," he said quietly. She smiled politely. But there was something in her eyes, something deep, maybe pain or understanding, that made Ethan curious. He wanted to say more, but he didn't know how. After a few minutes, Sarah brought the bill. "Take your time," she said. "No rush." Ethan looked out the window while Lily finished her orange juice. For the first time in years, he felt that life was more than numbers and profits. It was moments like this, simple, human, full of warmth. When they finally got up to leave, Lily waved at Sarah. "Bye, Mommy Sarah," she called out cheerfully. The whole diner laughed softly, and Sarah smiled wide, though her eyes shimmered. "Goodbye, little one," she said. "You made my morning special." Ethan reached into his pocket to tip her, but she gently shook her head. "You don't need to," she said quietly. "She already gave me more than money could." As Ethan led Lily outside, he looked back one last time. Sarah was standing by the counter, watching them leave, her hand pressed against her heart. He didn't know why, but he couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had just crossed for a reason. The morning sun reflected off the diner's windows as they walked to the car. Lily held his hand tightly, humming a little tune. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't think about business or meetings. He thought about his daughter, his late wife, and the kind waitress who had reminded him, if only for a few minutes, what love still looked like in the world. As the car pulled away, he glanced at Lily's smiling face and silently promised himself something. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he wanted more moments like this, moments that felt real, and deep inside, without knowing why. He had a feeling that the woman from the diner would somehow become a part of their story again. The next morning, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about that little diner and the woman named Sarah. Something about the way she hugged Lily had stayed in his mind all night. It wasn't a fake smile or polite kindness. It was real, full of emotion. He didn't know why it touched him so deeply, but it did. He had seen people try to impress him all his life, from business partners to charity workers. But that waitress had shown pure warmth without expecting anything back. Lily, on the other hand, couldn't stop talking about Sarah. She told her dolls about her new mommy Sarah. And she even drew a picture of the three of them at the diner, holding hands. Ethan looked at the picture later that night and felt his heart twist. He didn't know how to explain to his little girl that some people entered your life only for a moment. No matter how much you wanted them to stay. A week passed, but the memory of that morning stayed with both of them. One Saturday, when Lily woke up early, she asked, "Daddy, can we go to the pancake place again?" Ethan smiled. He had a lot of work to do, calls to make, contracts to sign, but he couldn't say no to her hopeful eyes. "All right," he said. "Let's go." When they arrived, the same small diner welcomed them with the same warm smell of butter and coffee. The bell above the door jingled, and the moment they stepped inside, Sarah looked up from behind the counter. For a second, surprise flashed across her face, then she smiled. "Well, look who's back," she said cheerfully. "My favorite pancake princess." Lily giggled and ran straight to her. Sarah bent down and hugged her again, just like before. Ethan watched quietly. Something about seeing Lily so happy filled a space in his chest that had been empty for too long. They sat in the same booth by the window. Sarah brought them water and a coloring book for Lily before taking their order. "So, the usual? Pancakes with lots of syrup?" she asked. "Yes," Lily said excitedly. "And can we have whipped cream this time?" Sarah winked. "You got it?" Ethan looked at her with a faint smile. "You seem to remember us. How could I forget?" Sarah replied softly. "Your daughter made my whole week better last time she came." She walked away to put in their order. Ethan noticed how icily she moved around the room greeting customers by name, remembering what they liked, laughing at their jokes. There was something warm about her, something that didn't fit the world he came from. When the food arrived, Lily dug into her pancakes happily while Ethan sipped his coffee. Sarah checked on them now and then, but Ethan could tell she was keeping a respectful distance. He appreciated that. Still, every time their eyes met, he felt something, a quiet understanding that didn't need words. After a while, Ethan's phone buzzed. He frowned. It was his assistant again, calling about a sudden issue with one of his overseas projects. He sighed and looked at Lily. "I'll just be outside for a minute, sweetheart." Lily nodded without looking up, too busy decorating her pancakes with whipped cream. Ethan stepped out to take the call, pacing near the parking lot. Inside, Sarah noticed Lily was sitting alone. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over. "Hey there, little artist," she said, looking at Lily's pancake masterpiece. "That looks delicious." Lily grinned. "I'm making a smiley face. This one's Mommy, this one's me, and this one's Daddy." She pointed to the syrup circles. Then her smile faded. "But Mommy's not really here." Sarah's heart softened. "I know, sweetheart," she said gently. "But she's still with you, even if you can't see her." Lily looked down. "Sometimes I forget her voice. That makes me sad. Daddy doesn't talk about her. Maybe it makes him sad too." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She could see the loneliness in the little girl's eyes. Same loneliness she'd felt when she lost her own daughter's laughter after her ex-husband took her away. "You're very brave," she said softly, "and your mommy would be proud of you." Lily looked at her quietly for a moment, then suddenly reached out and hugged her. "Can I hug you again?" she whispered. Sarah's heart melted. She knelt beside the booth and wrapped her arms around Lily, holding her gently. The hug lasted longer, this time warm, real, full of love neither of them had expected, and that was when Ethan came back inside. He stopped near the door. The words from his phone call fading from his mind. There, in front of him, was his daughter, holding on to the waitress, as if she were something precious she didn't want to lose. For a second, he didn't move. He just watched. The sight hit him harder than he expected. It reminded him of all the times Lily had asked for her mother and he had avoided the topic, too afraid of reopening his own wounds. But now, watching Sarah hug his daughter with genuine care, something inside him broke loose. He realized how much Lily needed affection, something more than expensive gifts and polite smiles. Sarah glanced up and saw Ethan standing there. For a moment, she froze, worried she might have crossed a line. But Ethan's expression wasn't angry. It was soft, tired, and strangely peaceful. "I hope you don't mind," Sarah said quietly, still holding Lily. She was a little sad. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No," he said, his voice low. "Thank you." He sat down again, and Sarah gently pulled away from Lily, wiping her eyes quickly. "All right, little one," she said with a shaky laugh. "Eat before your pancakes get cold." Lily smiled and picked up her fork again, cheerful as ever. Ethan couldn't stop watching Sarah. There was something about her that felt genuine, rare. Maybe it was her kindness. Maybe it was the way she didn't treat him like a rich man, just a father and his child. When the meal was done, Ethan went to pay at the counter. "How long have you worked here?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah smiled faintly. "A few years now. It's not fancy, but it pays the bills." He nodded. "You're good with kids." Her smile faded just a little. "I used to have one," she said softly, her eyes dropping to the register. "She's not with me anymore." Ethan didn't know what to say. Before he could respond, another customer called her name, and she turned away. He paid the bill, left a generous tip, and walked back to Lily. As they stepped outside, Lily waved through the window. "Bye, Mommy Sarah," she shouted again. Sarah laughed from inside, but Ethan noticed her wipe her cheek quickly before turning back to work. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her drawing. Ethan glanced at her in the mirror. His chest felt heavy, but also strangely warm. Something had shifted inside him. That small diner, that simple hug-it, had opened a door he didn't know was still there. He looked out at the road ahead, the autumn sunlight glinting off the windshield, and for the first time in years, He felt that maybe not everything precious in life was gone forever. Sometimes it could be found again, in the most unexpected places. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Sarah after that day. Every time he tried to focus on work, his mind went back to the moment when she hugged Lily. There was something about the way she looked at his daughter, full of love and sadness at the same time, that haunted him. He was used to reading people, businessmen, investors, partners, but Sarah's face was different. It held stories that hadn't been told yet. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Ethan sat alone in his office. The city lights sparkled outside the window, but they didn't give him peace. His office was filled with awards, framed newspaper articles, and certificates, reminders of his success. Yet none of them made him feel proud anymore. He looked at a photo on his desk of Anna, his late wife, holding baby Lily. Her smile used to make everything make sense. But now, looking at that picture only reminded him of how much had changed. He took a deep breath and thought about Sarah again. She had said something, "I used to have one," when he told her she was good with kids. Those words kept echoing in his mind. He wondered what she meant. Did she lose her child? Was she talking about death? Or something else? He didn't want to invade her privacy, but his curiosity grew stronger each day. The next week, Ethan found an excuse to go back to the diner again. He told himself it was for Lily, but deep down he knew he wanted to see Sarah. This time Lily was at school, so he went alone. When he entered the diner, Sarah was behind the counter, writing something in a small notebook. She looked up and smiled when she saw him, a little surprised. "Oh, you're back," she said kindly. "Where's the little princess today?" "At school," Ethan said, taking a seat at the counter. "I was passing by and thought I'd stop in for coffee." Sarah nodded and poured him a cup. "Black, right?" He smiled faintly. "You have a good memory. It's part of the job," she said with a small laugh. They talked for a few minutes, nothing deep, just small things. But Ethan was watching her carefully. He noticed the tiredness in her eyes, the way her smile sometimes faltered when she thought no one was looking. She was clearly carrying something heavy inside. A few minutes later, one of her coworkers, a middle-aged woman named Brenda, came over. "Hey, Sarah, I talked to my lawyer friend about your case. He said he might be able to help." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, and she lowered her voice. "Really? That would mean so much. I don't have the money yet." Brenda touched her arm softly. "Don't give up. You'll get your daughter back one day." Ethan froze. "Her daughter?" He looked down at his coffee, pretending not to listen, but his heart was racing. Now it made sense, the way she hugged Lily, the way her eyes filled with tears when Lily called her mommy Sarah. It was pain. She wasn't comforting a stranger's child. She was remembering her own. After a moment, Sarah noticed Ethan's expression and tried to change the subject. "Everything all right?" she asked. He nodded, though his mind was spinning. "Yes, just thinking about something." When he finished his coffee, he left a large tip again, but Sarah called after him. "You don't need to keep doing that." He turned back and smiled slightly. "Maybe I just appreciate good service." Outside. He sat in his car for a while before driving off. He couldn't shake what he had heard. That night, when Lily was asleep, he called one of his assistants. "I need you to find out some background information on a woman named Sarah. She works at a small diner off Route 16, he said quietly. "No publicity and no invasion of privacy. I just need to know her story." 2 days later, the report came in. It wasn't long, but every word hit Ethan hard. Sarah Miller, 34 years old, once worked as an office assistant at a company called Caldwell and Brooks Holdings, his company. She was laid off 3 years ago when one of his departments was downsized. The report said that after losing her job, she fell behind on rent, got divorced, and lost custody of her daughter. When her husband proved she was financially unstable, Ethan felt a wave of guilt crash over him. He had made that decision, the layoffs, to save profits during a tough quarter. He hadn't even known the names of the people who lost their jobs. But now, one of those names had a face. A kind, gentle face that had comforted his daughter. He sat there for a long time, staring at the report. He remembered Sarah's soft laugh, the kindness in her eyes, the way she looked at Lily as if she were her own. And now he realized that, in some way, his own choices had taken everything from her. The next day, he drove back to the diner again. This time, he didn't know what he was going to say. He just knew he needed to see her. When he arrived, Sarah was busy serving a family at one of the tables. She smiled brightly at them, but when she turned around, Ethan could see the exhaustion behind that smile. When she finally came over to his table, she seemed surprised. "You again," she said with a small laugh. "You really must like our coffee." "Maybe I like the company," he said honestly. Sarah blushed a little, caught off guard. "Well, that's a first." Ethan hesitated before speaking again. "You used to work for Caldwell and Brooks Holdings, right?" Her expression changed immediately. The warmth faded, replaced by something cautious. "Yes," she said slowly. "A long time ago." "I see," he said quietly. "That was my company." Sarah's eyes widened. "Your company?" He nodded. "I'm Ethan Caldwell." For a moment, silence hung between them. Sarah looked at him, shocked. Then she laughed nervously. "Well, that explains the suit," she said softly. "I should have guessed." "Dad." "I read about what happened after the layoffs," Ethan said gently. "I'm sorry." Sarah looked down, fiddling with her apron. "It wasn't your fault. It was just life. Things happen." "But I made the decision," he said. "I was the one who signed the papers." She shook her head. "I don't blame you. I just wish things had been different. I lost everything, my job, my home, my daughter. But you learned to survive." Ethan wanted to say something, to apologize properly, but before he could, a customer called for her. She smiled weakly. "Excuse me," she said, walking away. He sat there for a long time after she left, staring at the empty coffee cup. For the first time in years, he felt powerless not as a businessman, but as a human being. On the drive home, he thought about Sarah's life. She had every reason to hate him, yet she had shown nothing but kindness to his daughter, and that made him respect her even more. That night, he tucked Lily into bed and kissed her forehead. "Daddy," she murmured sleepily, "can we see Mommy Sarah again?" He smiled softly. "Maybe soon, sweetheart." As he turned off the light, Ethan made up his mind. He couldn't change the past, but he could try to make things right. Sarah deserved more than just sympathy. She deserved a second chance, and maybe, in helping her, he could finally begin to heal himself too. Ethan spent the next few days thinking carefully about what to do. He knew he couldn't simply walk into the diner and hand Sarah money. That would feel like charity, and he wanted to offer more than just financial help. She was proud, independent, and kind qualities that had clearly helped Lily feel loved in his absence. He wanted to help her rebuild her life in a way that gave her dignity, not pity. After making some calls and arranging a private meeting, Ethan decided to invite Sarah to his office under the guise of a potential business opportunity. He wanted to meet her in a neutral space where she wouldn't feel judged or trapped. When she arrived, she looked nervous but composed. Her posture was straight, her eyes cautious, but there was a warmth in her smile when she recognized him. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, gesturing to a chair. "I wanted to talk to you in private." Sarah nodded, sitting down carefully. "I wasn't expecting this," she said. "I thought maybe you were here about the diner," partly Ethan admitted. "But mostly, I wanted to talk about something bigger. I know what happened after the layoff. I know it led to some very difficult times for you." Sarah's expression shifted, a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "You know?" Ethan nodded. "I do, and I feel responsible. It was my company that let you go, and in a way, it changed everything for you. I want to do something about it, Tiff. You'll allow me." Sarah stayed silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. She had spent years surviving on her own, teaching herself to be strong, to handle life's blows without relying on anyone else. And now, here was the man whose decisions had changed her life. Sitting in front of her, speaking honestly and respectfully. "What exactly do you mean?" she asked finally. "I want to help you regain custody of your daughter," Ethan said. "I can provide legal support, financial resources, and a plan to make sure you're stable." but I want you to be in charge. I won't impose anything, and I won't take control. You decide how this works. I just want to make sure you have a fair chance." Sarah's eyes widened. She had spent years believing that getting her daughter back was impossible. Every lawyer she had consulted said she couldn't afford a strong enough case, that her circumstances were against her. And now, here was a man with resources and influence offering her exactly that, but without demanding anything in return. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you help me?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Because of what you did for my daughter. That hug you gave Lily, it was more than kindness. You showed her what love can feel like, even when it's missing from her life. And that reminded me of what I've been missing too. I want to make things right not just for you, but for my daughter and for myself." Sarah blinked, fighting back tears. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had acknowledged the pain she carried and treated her with respect at the same time. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Ethan said gently. "Say yes to the opportunity to fight for your daughter, and I'll support you every step of the way. No strings attached." Sarah took a long moment to consider. She wanted to say no, to protect herself from disappointment. She had been let down too many times before. But she also knew that this was a chance she couldn't ignore. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. But I want to work, not just take charity." "I can't accept that," Ethan smiled. "Absolutely. You'll have work to do, decisions to make, and control over your own path. I just provide the tools." Over the next few months, Ethan worked quietly behind the scenes. He connected Sarah with top-notch family lawyers, coordinated resources to stabilize her living situation, and helped her prepare for court in a way she'd never imagined possible. All the while, Sarah continued working at the diner, keeping her routine and independence intact. She wasn't taking handouts. She was reclaiming her life. Lily noticed the changes too. Whenever they visited the diner, Sarah seemed lighter, happier, more at peace. She laughed more easily, and Lily loved helping her draw little pictures on the napkins while she worked. The bond between them grew stronger. Built on trust and genuine affection rather than pity, Ethan watched all of this quietly from the background. Proud and relieved. He had seen his daughter smile in a way he hadn't seen since Anna passed. And he realized that this wasn't just about helping Sarah, it was about healing his own heart too. He had been so focused on his grief and work that he hadn't noticed how much Lily needed love from someone like Sarah. Finally, the day came when the court decision was announced. Sarah was granted custody of her daughter. The courtroom had been tense, but her confidence and the careful preparation arranged by Ethan made a difference. She held her daughter tightly as the judge's words were read, tears streaming down her face. It was a moment she had waited for years to experience. Ethan watched from the back of the courtroom, invisible to the family, but present in spirit. He felt a deep satisfaction, not of wealth or power, but of seeing a life restored. It was a reminder that the real value in life wasn't money or business deals, but human connection and compassion. After the court proceedings, Sarah visited the diner again, now with her daughter by her side. Lily ran up to her, hugging her tightly. Sarah smiled down at her daughter, then glanced at Ethan, who was sitting quietly in a corner. She mouthed a simple, heartfelt thank you, and he nodded back, understanding the unspoken gratitude. From that day on, Sarah and her daughter began building a new life together. The struggles of the past didn't disappear, but with the right support, they became stepping stones instead of obstacles. Sarah returned to her work at the diner, but also had new opportunities. Supported by Ethan's quiet guidance, Ethan, too, changed. He spent more time with Lily, learning how to be present in ways he never had before. He realized that wealth could provide comfort, but only human connection could provide happiness. Watching Sarah regain her life, seeing Lily smile freely, he understood something essential. Sometimes, helping someone else is the path to healing yourself. And so, the diner that had once seemed ordinary became a place of transformation. A simple act of kindness, a hug, had set off a chain of events that healed broken hearts, reunited a mother with her daughter, and reminded a father that love and compassion could never be bought, only shared. Through it all, Ethan learned that true strength was not measured in money or power, but in the courage to care, to apologize, and to make things right. And for Sarah, the journey proved that no matter how difficult life could get, second chances were possible, and hope could always be reclaimed by the end. Their lives were intertwined in ways none of them could have expected. Lily had two loving figures in her life, her father and the woman who had stepped in when her world felt incomplete. And in helping Sarah rise, Ethan discovered that love, kindness, and redemption could touch more lives than he had ever imagined. Months passed since the court had returned Sarah's daughter to her care. Life was beginning to settle into a new rhythm for all of them. The diner, once just a small workplace where Sarah served pancakes and coffee, had transformed into a place of hope and friendship. Sarah had started teaching her daughter little life skills: cooking, reading, and the small joys of everyday life while still working her shifts. Determined to show her daughter that life could be both hard and beautiful, Lily, Ethan's little girl, had grown even closer to Sarah. She would often spend Saturday mornings at the diner, drawing little pictures or helping Sarah arrange napkins and condiments, laughing freely as she had not done for a long time. Sometimes Ethan would watch from a corner of the diner, feeling a quiet joy he hadn't realized he was missing. It was not a joy that came from wealth or business deals, but from watching two children form a bond and seeing the gentle way Sarah cared for them both. Ethan himself had begun to change. The lonely businessman who had once buried himself in work was now more present. He spent more time with Lily, taking her to the park, helping her with homework, and even learning to play board games, activities that he had always dismissed as unimportant. He discovered that the time he spent nurturing his daughter's happiness was more valuable than any business deal he had ever made. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the diner's windows, Ethan arrived to find Sarah preparing a small corner with a few chairs and books for the children who came in. He watched quietly as Sarah's daughter ran around, giggling, and Lily followed her, carrying a small tray of juice. Both girls were laughing, their voices mixing in a joyful harmony. It was a sight Ethan never expected to see: the blending of two families, two sets of lives coming together in warmth and simplicity. Sarah noticed Ethan watching and smiled. He nodded back, grateful. Their relationship had become one of mutual respect and quiet friendship. She didn't treat him as a billionaire, and he didn't treat her as someone he had saved. They were simply people, connected through circumstance, kindness, and the shared goal of nurturing two little girls who deserved love and happiness. Over time, Ethan found ways to support Sarah without overshadowing her independence. He provided funding for her daughter's schooling and helped her find a small apartment near the diner, ensuring stability without intruding. Sarah, in turn, continued her work and took pride in her achievements. She never let the past define her, and she embraced the second chance life had given her. Lily often asked Ethan questions about Sarah's life, and he answered them honestly but gently. He told her that sometimes life is difficult, but kind people can help one another, and that's how love grows. Lily, in her innocent wisdom, absorbed these lessons. She began to understand that family wasn't just defined by blood, it was defined by care, trust, and shared moments of joy. One afternoon, Ethan took both girls to the park. Sarah joined them with a picnic basket, and the children ran freely on the swings and slides. Watching them, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that the hug he had seen months ago, the one Sarah had given Lily when she missed her mother, had started something extraordinary. It had created a ripple of love and change that extended far beyond that single moment. Sarah's daughter, shy at first, had begun to trust Lily. Together, the two girls shared stories, snacks, and laughter. Sarah and Ethan, sitting on a nearby bench, watched them interact, feeling a shared quiet pride. Neither had expected such a bond to form so naturally, but it did. As if the universe had arranged this moment carefully, Ethan reflected on the path that had brought them here. He remembered how his wealth had once felt like everything, how deals and contracts consumed his life. But now he understood that money could never replace love, kindness, or the small joys of everyday life. It could provide comfort, yes, but real happiness came from connection, seeing someone smile because of your presence. Offering support without judgment and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, Sarah had grown too. She had learned to trust again, to believe in herself and her ability to care for her daughter. She had seen that even after the harshest struggles, life could offer second chances. She had also discovered that love wasn't limited to romantic feelings. It could be found in friendship, family, and the simple act of showing kindness to someone who needed it most. As the seasons changed, Ethan continued to spend Saturdays at the diner with Lily. Sometimes Sarah joined them for breakfast. Other times, she brought her daughter along. The girls laughed, shared stories, and drew pictures together. Ethan noticed how much Lily had matured. She had learned empathy, patience, and joy from Sarah's presence in her life. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Ethan sat with Sarah outside the diner. They didn't need to speak much. Words were unnecessary. The quiet satisfaction of seeing their children happy, the unspoken understanding of the struggles each had endured, and the recognition of what had been healed was enough. Ethan realized that the simple hug in the diner had done more than comfort his daughter for a moment had created a ripple effect that changed multiple lives. Sarah had regained her daughter. Lily had gained a mother figure and friend. And Ethan had discovered a deeper sense of purpose and compassion. Months turned into a year, and the bond between the two families grew stronger. They celebrated birthdays together, shared small holidays, and even took short trips to the countryside. The girls thrived in this new environment, their laughter and energy filling the air wherever they went. Sarah and Ethan supported each other quietly, with respect and care. Without any pressure or expectation, Ethan often reflected on his life before this change. He realized how lonely he had been, how much he had relied on money and work to fill a void that could only be filled by love and human connection. Watching Sarah nurture her daughter, seeing Lily happy, and observing the bond between the two girls had shown him that real wealth was measured not in dollars, but in the happiness and well-being of those you care about. For Sarah, the journey had been transformative. She had faced loss, betrayal, and hardship, but she had never given up. The opportunity to rebuild her life, regain custody of her daughter, and form meaningful connections had given her strength and renewed hope. She now understood that life, though unpredictable and sometimes cruel, also offered unexpected gifts that could heal wounds and create joy. Ethan and Sarah had formed a quiet friendship. Built on mutual respect and shared experiences, neither of them needed to fill the other's life with grandeur or obligation. They had learned that the most meaningful relationships are based on understanding, compassion, and trust. The diner, once just a place of work, had become a symbol of this transformation. It was where Lily had first felt comfort, where Sarah had shared her warmth, and where Ethan had begun to understand the power of human kindness. It was a place where broken hearts were mended, where love could grow quietly, and where hope could be found in the simplest acts: smile, a hug, or just being present. Through all of this, Ethan realized that life could change in the blink of an eye. One small act of kindness, Sarah hugging Lily, had set off a chain of events that had healed broken lives, created lasting bonds, and reminded everyone involved of the power of compassion. As the two families continued to grow together, Ethan understood that this was more than just redemption or charity. It was life itself, messy, unpredictable, sometimes painful, but always capable of offering joy and love if one was willing to embrace it. In the end, the little diner, the simple hug, and the willingness to care for others had done what money and power never could. They had healed hearts, rebuilt families, and created a future full of hope. Ethan, Lily, Sarah, and her daughter had discovered that the most meaningful treasures in life are not bought or earned. They are shared, nurtured, and cherished through love, kindness, and human connection. And so, life went on, ordinary yet extraordinary, simple yet profound. Two families, once strangers, had become intertwined in a story of compassion and hope. They laughed, they cried, and they grew together. And in the warmth of that little diner, and in the hearts of those who had been touched by one small, meaningful hug, the power of love and second chances endured forever.